A teacher? You just babysit kids for pennies. My father said that in front of 40 guests, 3 cousins I hadn't seen in a decade, and my 4-year-old daughter, who was sitting on my husband's lap. My husband didn't flinch. He set down his fork, placed his napkin on the table, and he looked at my father the way you look at someone who just confirmed everything you already knew about them. He didn't say a word. 2 days later, my father would be sitting in a room full of 300 people, watching that same man receive something Gerald Whitfield could never buy with all the dealership money in Georgia. And for the first time in 67 years, my father had nothing to say. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What happened in those 2 days changed 5 relationships in my family, permanently. And it started with a phone call I should never have answered. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'm always amazed at where you all are watching from. My name is Cora. I'm 33. I'm a nurse in Savannah, Georgia. And this is the story of how my father tried to destroy my marriage at his own anniversary party, and how a quiet man in a $20 tie answered him without raising his voice. Now let me take you back 8 weeks ago, to the evening my mother's number appeared on my phone for the first time in 5 years. I was kneeling beside the bathtub, rinsing shampoo out of Lily's hair, when my phone buzzed on the tile floor. The screen said Mom, not Mom with a heart emoji like some people have, just Mom. Capital letters, no photo, no contact card. I deleted everything else 5 years ago. I only kept the number in case of an emergency, death or hospitalization. Those were the only 2 reasons I told myself I'd ever pick up. But I picked up anyway. Cora? Her voice was already wet, already trembling. My mother could cry on command. I'd known that since I was 12. But this sounded different, thinner, older. Hi, Mom. Your father and we're having our 45th anniversary. A big gathering, family, friends, the whole neighborhood. I didn't say anything. Lily splashed her rubber duck. He's different, Cora. He asks about you. Last Christmas he sat in Lily's nursery, the room we set up for her when you were pregnant. He just sat there. I closed my eyes. 5 years ago, my father had stood in his kitchen, the same kitchen where he taught me to scramble eggs, and given me an ultimatum. His exact words, "You drop that teacher, or you don't walk through this door again." I chose Nathan. The door slammed. 5 years of silence followed. Now Diane was filling that silence with tears. Lily deserves to know her grandparents. Megan's already talked to your father. Everyone's ready. You're the only one who hasn't come home. There it was, the framing. I was the holdout. I was the problem. I looked at Lily. She was 4 years old and had never met her grandparents. She didn't know their faces, their voices, the smell of my mother's lavender lotion. That was the weakness, and my mother knew exactly where to press. I'll think about it, Mom. That's all I'm asking, sweetheart. She hung up. Lily looked at me. Who was that, Mommy? I didn't answer right away. Nathan was at the kitchen table grading essays when I came downstairs. Red pen in one hand, mug of cold coffee in the other. He had a stack of 11th grade papers on the Reconstruction era, and he was circling a paragraph with the kind of care most people reserve for legal contracts. My mom called, I said. He didn't look up right away. He finished his mark, capped the pen, and then gave me his full attention. That was Nathan. He never half listened. She wants us to come to their 45th anniversary, a big reunion, the whole family. When? Next Saturday. He was quiet for a moment, not the hesitant kind of quiet, the thinking kind. If you want to go, he said, we go, but I need you to know something. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I'd never ask you to. I know, I'm just saying it out loud. I sat across from him. Between the essay stacks, I noticed a large manila envelope, thick, official-looking, stamped with the Chatham County Board of Education seal. It was already opened, the letter halfway pulled out, then tucked back in like he'd read it and set it aside. What's that? I asked. Nathan glanced at it, slid it under a pile of papers. Nothing urgent, school stuff. I let it go. I had bigger things on my mind. Lily's never met them, I said. Not once. She's 4, Nathan. She doesn't even know what a grandparent is. He reached across the table and took my hand. Then let's give her the chance. That's reason enough. We decided that Friday. Drive up from Savannah, 4 hours to the little town outside Atlanta where I grew up. Stay the weekend. Come back Sunday or Monday. I didn't ask about that envelope. I wish I had. It would have saved me 2 days of thinking my husband didn't care about what my father said to him. The drive took 4 hours and 12 minutes. I know because Lily asked, "Are we there yet?" Exactly 17 times, and I counted every one. My parents' house hadn't changed. Ranch style, red brick, wide front lawn, American flag on the porch post. The same azalea bushes my mother planted when I was in middle school. The same cracked driveway where I learned to ride a bike. Everything frozen in place, like the house had been holding its breath for 5 years, waiting. My mother was at the door before we even parked. She came down the steps fast. Too fast for a 65-year-old woman who claimed her knees were giving out, and wrapped her arms around me. She smelled like lavender and hairspray. She held on for a long time, crying into my shoulder. "Oh, Cora. Oh, my girl." My father stood behind her in the doorway. He was wearing his good khakis and a polo shirt, his version of dressing up. He looked older, thinner in the shoulders. He nodded at Nathan, then extended his hand. Nathan shook it. The handshake lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then Gerald saw Lily. He crouched down, slowly, knees cracking, and opened his arms. "Well, who is this pretty little lady?" Lily looked up at me. I nodded. She walked to him. He picked her up and she giggled, and something inside me softened against my will. Inside, Diane had set out sweet tea and pound cake. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and pot roast. Normal. Safe. Almost. But in the living room, I noticed something. An extra place setting. A chair with a new cushion, a glass of water already poured, positioned right next to where I'd be sitting. "Who's that for?" I asked. Diane's eyes flickered. "Oh, a family friend is stopping by tomorrow." She changed the subject fast. Too fast. That empty chair. I should have paid more attention to it. Friday night. Just the 6 of us. Gerald, Diane, Megan, Nathan, Lily, and me. A small dinner before the big event. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can. The meal my mother had made every Friday since 1985. For the first 20 minutes it almost felt normal. Megan asked about Lily's preschool. Diane fussed over everyone's plates. Gerald carved the roast with the same serrated knife he'd had since I was born. Then he started. "So, Nathan." He didn't look up from his plate. "Still teaching?" The way he said still, like it was a chronic condition. Like Nathan had been diagnosed with something, and everyone was just waiting for the remission. "Yes, sir. 11th grade American history. I also coach the debate team." Gerald chewed, swallowed, wiped his mouth. "You know who I ran into last month? Travis Keller? You remember Travis, Cora?" I felt my spine stiffen. Vaguely. "Good kid. Just opened his 3rd dealership, BMW. He's not even 40 yet." Gerald was looking at Nathan when he said it, not at me, at Nathan. That's ambition. The table went quiet for a half-beat. Megan reached for the bread basket and said, "This pot roast is amazing, Mom." God bless her for trying. Under the table I found Nathan's hand. He squeezed mine once. Calm, steady. Gerald wasn't done. "No offense, son. I just worry about my daughter's future. Teachers don't exactly retire rich." Nathan's jaw tightened. Barely, just a flicker. Then it was gone. "We're doing fine, Gerald. Thank you." "Fine," Gerald repeated, like the word tasted sour. "Fine is a low bar." Diane clinked her fork against her glass. "Who wants dessert? I made pecan pie." Gerald mentioned Travis twice more before the pie was gone, once about his trip to Italy, once about his lake house. Each time his eyes drifted to Nathan. This wasn't small talk. This was target practice. That night, I lay in my old bedroom staring at the ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck up there in 7th grade were still faintly visible. Little green ghosts of a girl who once thought this house was the safest place in the world. Nathan was on the air mattress beside the bed, reading to Lily. "Good night, Moon." She was almost asleep, her small fingers wrapped around his index finger. He did the voices, the quiet old lady whispering, "Hush," and Lily's eyes fluttered shut. He set the book down and looked at me. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. I stared at those ceiling stars and thought about what silence would cost. If I said nothing, if I smiled through the weekend and drove home and called it peace, what would Lily learn? That a man can be belittled at a dinner table and the people who love him just pass the bread? That being a good person means being a quiet target? 5 years ago, Gerald had told his golf buddies that Nathan would never buy Cora a real house. He said it at a 4th of July barbecue, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. Nathan had been standing 6 feet away, holding a plate of corn on the cob. He didn't say anything then either. Not because he was weak. Because he didn't think a man who measured everything in square footage was worth the argument. I left that night, packed my bag, drove to Savannah, and didn't come back. Until now. The stakes were simple and impossible. If I stayed silent, I lost my self-respect. If I spoke up too early, I lost Lily's chance at having grandparents. Both options hurt, and Gerald was counting on that. I didn't come back to fight. I came back because Lily deserves a family. But lying in that dark room, listening to my daughter breathe, I was starting to realize something. Not every family deserves Lily. Saturday morning. The house was chaos before 8. Diane had hired a catering company, 2 women in black aprons setting up chafing dishes on the back porch. A long folding table stretched across the yard, draped in white cloth. At the head of the driveway, a hand-painted banner read, "Whitfield family, 45 years. Gerald was in the backyard directing traffic like a general. Move that table 6 inches left. No, the good chairs go in front. Where are the name cards? Name cards. At a family barbecue." I found him arranging place settings and asked, "Dad, how many people are coming?" "About 40, maybe 45. "And you invited the Kellers?" He didn't look up. "Travis is coming, yes. He's doing real well, Cora. You should catch up." I let a beat pass. "Did you invite Travis because of me?" He laughed, short, dismissive. "Don't flatter yourself. He's a family friend." Family friend. Travis Keller had been to our house exactly twice before I left. Both times at Gerald's invitation, both times seated next to me, both times after Gerald had loudly announced Travis's latest financial achievement. Family friend was a generous description. Megan found me in the kitchen 10 minutes later. She pulled me into the pantry, between the canned peaches and the bulk rice, and whispered, "Dad's been talking about Travis all week. He called him 2 days ago to confirm. Be careful." "Careful how?" She bit her lip. "He put Travis's name card next to your seat. I moved it. He put it back." My stomach dropped. Then Megan said something else, almost as an afterthought. "Oh, someone from Nathan's school called the house last week, asked if Nathan was going to some ceremony on Monday. I didn't catch the details. I told them he was traveling." I didn't connect it. Not yet. I should have. The first guests arrived at noon. By 1 o'clock, the backyard was full. Aunts and uncles I hadn't seen since my 20s. Second cousins whose names I'd forgotten. Neighbors who still called me Little Cora, even though I was 33 with a nursing degree and a child. Country music drifted from a Bluetooth speaker on the porch railing. Kids chased each other across the lawn. Diane floated between tables, refilling sweet tea and accepting compliments on the hydrangeas. And then a red BMW pulled into the driveway. Travis Keller stepped out like he was arriving at a magazine shoot. Navy blazer, no tie, loafers with no socks. He was 36 and looked it, in the way that money makes you look, tanned, groomed, confident. Gerald crossed the yard in 4 strides. He shook Travis's hand with both of his. I watched from the porch. My father hadn't greeted Nathan with half that warmth. "Cora!" Gerald called. "Come say hello." I walked over with Nathan beside me. Lily was on Nathan's hip, picking at a flower she'd pulled from the garden. "Cora, you remember Travis? He just got back from a trip to Italy. Tell her, Travis." Travis smiled. Polite, rehearsed. "The Amalfi Coast. Incredible." "And this is Nathan," Gerald said. He paused before the word. "Cora's husband." The pause was a scalpel, small and precise. Everyone heard it. Travis extended his hand. Nathan shifted Lily to his other hip and shook it. Good to meet you, Nathan said. Likewise, Gerald clapped Travis on the shoulder. Travis, tell them about the new showroom. Just opened in Buckhead, 12,000 square feet. See? Gerald beamed at the table. That's ambition. Nathan said nothing. He adjusted Lily's sandal strap and kissed the top of her head. My father was performing, and we were all supposed to be his audience. The insult came during the main course. Gerald stood at the head of the table, tapping his glass with a butter knife. 40-something people turned to look. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked Diane for 45 years. He thanked God, the caterer, the weather. He was good at this, the public performance of a family man. Then he turned to our end of the table. His eyes landed on Nathan like a searchlight. Nathan, why don't you tell everyone what you do? It wasn't a question. It was a setup. I could feel it the way you feel thunder before you hear it. Nathan set his fork down gently. I'm a high school history teacher, in Savannah. Gerald tilted his head. Let the silence cook for a beat. A teacher? He let out a half laugh. Not quite a sneer, not quite a joke. Worse, something in between. You just babysit kids for pennies. The yard went silent. 40 people. The clink of ice in someone's glass. A mockingbird in the oak tree. The Bluetooth speaker between songs. Nathan placed his napkin beside his plate. He looked at my father. Not with anger, not with hurt, with recognition. The look of a man who just had a suspicion confirmed. He said nothing. Lily was on his lap. She looked up at him with her big brown eyes. Daddy, why is Grandpa laughing? My chest cracked open. Right there at the table, something broke that I didn't know could still break. Not because of what Gerald said to Nathan. Nathan could handle Gerald. But Lily heard it. My 4-year-old heard her grandfather call her father worthless, and she didn't understand why the adults were frozen, and she didn't understand the silence, and she asked the only honest question anyone at that table had the courage to ask. That was my limit. 3 seconds of silence. Maybe 4. It felt like 30. Aunt Ruth looked down at her potato salad like it held the secret to time travel. Uncle Jim cleared his throat. Diane reached for her glass and missed it by an inch. I opened my mouth. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Dad, Nathan is the hardest working person I know. You owe him an apology. Gerald didn't blink. I'm just stating facts, Cora. I didn't get where I am by being sensitive. This isn't about being sensitive. This is about basic decency. He waved his hand. The same hand gesture he used to dismiss salespeople at his dealership. Lighten up. It was a joke. Diane stood. Let's not ruin the party. Gerald, come help me with dessert. She was already walking toward the kitchen, her heels clicking on the patio stones, pulling the disaster behind her like a curtain. No one moved. Travis sat 2 chairs away, swirling his wine, studying the label like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever read. Not one person at that table said a word in Nathan's defense. Not one. Gerald straightened his collar. No offense, Nathan, but in this family, we build things. We don't babysit. Nathan looked at him for one more second. Then he turned to Lily. Hey, sweetheart. His voice was soft, warm, completely unchanged. You want to go see the fireflies in the yard? Lily's face lit up. Yes! He lifted her off his lap, took her hand, and they walked across the lawn together, past the banner that read Whitfield Family. 45 years. Past the catering table, past the 40 guests who watched them go and then turned back to their plates as if nothing had happened. That was the moment I realized this family didn't just fail to protect us. They participated. I wanted to leave that night. I told Nathan while Lily slept between us on the air mattress, her small chest rising and falling like a metronome. My voice was a whisper, but the anger wasn't. We're leaving tomorrow morning. First thing. I'm done. Nathan propped himself on his elbow. In the dark, I could only see the outline of his face. I need to ask you something, he said. Can we stay until Monday? I almost laughed. Monday? Why would you want to spend one more minute in this house? We won't be in this house. We'll be in Savannah. He reached over to his bag on the floor and pulled out the manila envelope, the one from the kitchen table back home, the one stamped with the Chatham County Board of Education seal, the one I saw and didn't ask about. He handed it to me. I opened it in the faint light from the window. A formal letter, embossed letterhead, words I had to read twice to believe. Teacher of the Year? Chatham County. The ceremony is Monday afternoon at the Civic Center. I stared at him. Nathan, when did you find out? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. And you didn't tell me? He was quiet. Then, I didn't want you to think I was trying to prove something to your father. That's not what this is about. It was never about him. Then what is it about? My students wrote letters. My principal said they've been planning this for months. I wasn't going to go. But Marcus, you remember Marcus Hall? He called me yesterday and said he's flying in from Atlanta to speak. I held the letter against my chest in the dark. My husband had been carrying this in his bag the entire trip and hadn't said a word. Not when Gerald called him a babysitter, not when 40 people looked away. He didn't need Gerald's approval. He never had. Sunday morning. Megan texted me at 7. Coffee? That place on Main? I left Nathan and Lily asleep and drove to a small diner 2 blocks from the house. Megan was already in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug, looking like she hadn't slept. I need to tell you something, she said before I sat down. Okay. Dad planned this, all of it. I slid into the booth. Planned what exactly? Travis, the seating, the question about Nathan's job. She lowered her voice. 2 weeks before the reunion, Dad called Travis directly. I was in the hallway. He said, and I'm quoting, I want you there, sitting next to Cora, so she can see what she could have had. I let that land. There's more, Megan said. He told people, Mrs. Patterson, the Hendersons, the Lyles, that you and Nathan were having problems, that you were probably getting a divorce soon. He said it like it was fact. That's a lie. We're not having any problems. I know, but he said it 3 weeks ago, before you even agreed to come. She looked at me. Don't you see? He set the stage. If you showed up without Nathan, it confirmed his story. If you showed up with Nathan, he'd embarrass him until you wished you hadn't. The coffee was bitter, and my hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Megan's eyes went glassy. I've been living under his roof my whole life, Cora. I didn't know how to say no to him. I still sleep in my childhood bedroom. I'm 37. She wiped her eyes with her napkin. I should have called you. I'm sorry. I reached across the table and held her hand. My sister. My complicated, complicit, frightened sister. For the first time, I saw her not as Gerald's ally, but as his other prisoner. This wasn't a reunion. It was a courtroom, and Nathan had been the defendant before he ever walked through the door. Okay, I need to pause the story for a second. Looking back on that Sunday morning at the coffee shop with Megan, that was the moment I realized this was never about Nathan's salary. It was never about money. It was about control. My father couldn't stand that I chose someone he didn't pick for me. He built an entire evening around punishing me for it. So let me ask you, why do you think Gerald went to all that trouble? The seating chart, Travis? The lie about my marriage? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think his real motivation was. All right, let me get back to what happened next. I went back to the house after coffee with Megan. I thought about packing the car. I thought about it hard. But Sunday brunch was already underway. About 15 people, the overnight relatives, a few neighbors who wandered back, gathered around the dining room table. Scrambled eggs, biscuits, grits, and Gerald at the head, holding court. Nathan was helping Lily cut her pancake into triangles. He was wearing the same calm expression he wore in his classroom. Steady, present, unreachable. Gerald was talking to Uncle Jim, but his voice carried. It was meant to. You know what teachers make in Georgia? 45, 50 grand if they're lucky. My receptionist made more than that, and she only worked 4 days a week. A few people chuckled. The polite kind. The kind that said, I don't want to be involved, but I also don't want to be rude. Gerald turned to Nathan, smiled. The smile of a man twisting a knife and calling it a handshake. No hard feelings, right, Nathan? I just worry about my little girl. Nathan looked up from Lily's pancake. I appreciate your concern, Gerald. 4 words. Gerald's smile faltered. Just a crack. He wanted a fight. Nathan gave him nothing. So Gerald changed targets. He leaned toward Lily. My daughter, 4 years old.
syrup on her chin. You know, sweetheart, if your daddy had a better job, you could have a bigger room. Grandpa could buy you the prettiest dollhouse in the whole world. Your daddy's boss doesn't pay him enough for one, does he? I heard the words hit the air like stones dropping into still water. Every ripple moved outward across the table. Megan froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Diane reached for the jam. Uncle Jim studied his biscuit. And something inside me went very, very quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a decision you can't take back. I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic. I set my napkin beside my plate, pushed my chair back, and stood the way you stand when you've made a decision that's been building for 5 years and 3 seconds. Dad. He looked at me, still smiling, still performing. You will not talk to my daughter about her father that way. Not today. Not ever. The smile dimmed. I'm just being honest, Cora. No, you're being cruel, and you're doing it in front of a 4-year-old. Diane's hand shot across the table toward mine. Cora, don't make a scene. Mom. I looked at her. A scene was made the second Dad decided to humiliate my husband at his own anniversary party. I just wasn't the one who made it. The room went tight. 15 people breathing shallow. Uncle Jim set down his fork. Aunt Ruth pressed her lips together and stared at the tablecloth. Then Megan did something I never expected. She stood up. She didn't say a word. She just pushed her chair back and walked around the table until she was standing beside me, shoulder to shoulder. It was a small thing, 6 steps and a change of position. But in this family, where geography at the table was politics, it was seismic. Gerald's face shifted. The performance cracked. You're choosing a teacher over your own family. His voice dropped low. Not shouting. Worse. Cold. Again. I looked at him. My father, 67 years old, standing at the head of his table in his own house, surrounded by people who were afraid to disagree with him. I'm choosing my family, I said. Nathan and Lily are my family. He held my gaze. I held his. You don't get to define my family's worth by the size of a paycheck. The silence after that sentence was the loudest sound in the room. Gerald's neck went red. It started below his collar and climbed like a vine. If you walk out that door, he said, don't come back. I almost smiled. Almost. Because he'd said those exact words to me 5 years ago, in this exact house, with that exact tone. And here we were, same script, same man, same threat. You said that 5 years ago, Dad. I survived. I turned to Nathan. He was already standing, Lily on his hip. Our bag was by the door. He'd packed it that morning, quietly, without being asked. Because Nathan always knew before I did when it was time to go. We walked to the front door, 15 people at the table, and not one of them moved. Not to stop us, not to follow, except Diane. She caught my arm in the hallway. Her mascara was running. Please don't go, he'll calm down. He doesn't need to calm down, Mom. I turned to face her. He needs to change, and you need to stop making excuses for him. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. Nathan buckled Lily into her car seat. I loaded the bag into the trunk. The Georgia sun was brutal and indifferent. Megan came through the front door, walking fast. She leaned into my open car window, eyes red, voice barely above a whisper. I'll call you tonight. I squeezed her hand through the window. Then I put the car in reverse. As we backed out of the driveway, I looked in the rearview mirror. Gerald was standing on the porch, arms crossed, jaw set. Diane was beside him, clutching a dish towel. Neither of them waved. Lily's voice came from the back seat, small, clear. Are we going home, Mommy? Nathan turned around and smiled at her. Not yet, Ladybug. Daddy has something to do tomorrow. I didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would be the day everything shifted. We drove to a motel 20 minutes from my parents' house. I didn't want to make the 4-hour drive to Savannah that night. Not upset, not in the dark with Lily in the back seat. We'd leave first thing Monday morning. Nathan didn't push. He carried Lily inside, tucked her into the stiff motel bed, and sat on the edge while she fell asleep with her stuffed elephant. Are you okay? I asked from the doorway. He looked at me. I'm better than okay. I just didn't want Lily to hear those things. She's 4, she won't remember. She might.
We didn't sleep much. We lay in the dark and listened to the ice machine hum outside the door. At some point, I rolled over and said, "I'm proud of you." And Nathan said, "I didn't do anything." And I said, "I know. That's why." Monday morning. We were on the road by 7, 4 hours to Savannah. Lily fell asleep before we hit the interstate. At 11, we pulled into our driveway. Nathan showered, put on his good shirt, the white Oxford he wore to parent-teacher conferences, a navy tie, the $20 tie I bought him at Marshall's 3 Christmases ago. I put on a sundress. Lily wore her yellow flower dress. Nathan called Principal Dawson to confirm. "Nathan, the auditorium is packed," Dawson said through the speakerphone. "Your students have been rehearsing their letters all weekend. Half the county is here." Nathan straightened his tie in the hallway mirror. His hands were steady. My phone buzzed, a text from Megan. "I told Dad there's an event in Savannah this afternoon, related to Nathan. I told him he should come. He's still at the hotel. He said yes." My heart hammered. He doesn't know what it is? No, he thinks it'll prove him right. I set the phone down. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. The Chatham County Civic Center was built in the 70s and still smelled like old carpet and ambition, but today it was transformed. A banner across the stage read, "Chatham County, Teacher of the Year, 2026. Rows of folding chairs filled the auditorium. More than 300 people, teachers in their professional best, parents with programs in their laps, students fidgeting, whispering, holding handmade signs. Nathan walked in through the side entrance. Principal Dawson met him with a handshake and a lapel pin. I took Lily to the 3rd row. Good seats, close enough to see his face. The ceremony opened with the Pledge of Allegiance. Then Superintendent Martha Collins stepped to the podium. She was a tall woman with reading glasses on a chain and the kind of voice that made you sit up straighter. "Every year," she began, "we recognize one educator who represents the best of what this profession can be. Not the flashiest, not the loudest, but the one whose impact is measured in lives changed." I scanned the auditorium. 3 rows behind me, on the left side, I saw them. Gerald, Diane, sitting in folding chairs like everyone else. Gerald was wearing his polo shirt from the reunion. He hadn't brought other clothes. Diane had her purse on her lap, clutched tight. They looked out of place, uncomfortable, like people who had walked into a room expecting one thing and sensing something else entirely. "This year's recipient," Superintendent Collins continued, "has given 12 years to public education. He has coached debate teams to state championships. He has volunteered hundreds of hours mentoring at-risk youth in our community. And in the words of one former student," she paused, adjusted her glasses, "he is the only reason I'm alive today." She turned toward the wings of the stage. "Please welcome Mr. Nathan Brennan." The auditorium erupted. 300 people stood. Lily bounced on my lap and yelled, "That's my daddy!" And 3 rows back, Gerald Whitfield did not move. Nathan took the stage the way he entered every classroom, without fanfare. He adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the crowd. He found me in the 3rd row and gave me the smallest nod. But before he could speak, Superintendent Collins announced the student tributes. The first voice belonged to Dr. Marcus Hall, 28 years old, white coat ceremony behind him, residency ahead of him. He walked to the podium with a folded piece of paper and hands that shook. "When I was 16, Marcus said, "I was sleeping in my car." The auditorium went still. "My mom was gone. No family, no address. I showed up to school every day because it was warm and because Mr. Brennan never asked me why my clothes smelled like motor oil." He unfolded the paper. His voice cracked. "He found out I was homeless. He didn't report me to some office. He drove me to school every morning for a year. He paid for my AP exam fees out of his own pocket. He co-signed my college application fee waiver, and when I got into Emory, when I stood there in my white coat last year, he was the only adult in the front row." Marcus stopped, wiped his eyes. 300 people were silent. "I'm a doctor today because a teacher believed in me when nobody else did." The applause came in waves. People were crying. The woman next to me handed me a tissue and I realized I needed one. Then Jamie Ostrowski, 24, first-generation college graduate, now a young attorney in Macon, stepped up. Mr. Brennan taught me that history isn't about memorizing dates, it's about understanding why people make the choices they do. He changed how I see the world. I turned around. I had to see. Gerald sat rigid. His hands were clenched on his thighs. Diane was pressing a handkerchief to her face. Not performing this time. Just crying. Gerald's mouth was a thin line. His eyes were locked on the man standing on that stage, the man he'd called a babysitter 2 days ago. And for the first time, he was seeing Nathan through 300 pairs of eyes that weren't his own. Nathan stepped to the microphone. He didn't have a prepared speech, no cards, no notes, just his hands resting lightly on the podium like he was about to start a Monday morning lesson. "I'm not good at speeches," he said. A few people laughed softly. "But I want to say something." He paused. "Someone told me recently that what I do is babysitting for pennies." A ripple of quiet laughter. They thought it was a joke, a self-deprecating opener. Nathan let it settle. "And I thought about that. I thought about it all weekend." The laughter faded. Something in his voice told them this wasn't a punchline. "Here's what I realized. They were right about one thing. I don't do this for the money. I never did." He looked at Marcus in the front row, at Jamie, at the 17-year-old kid with the homemade poster that said Mr. B changed my life. "I do this because a 16-year-old kid sleeping in his car deserves someone who showed up. I do this because every child in my classroom deserves to know that their potential isn't measured by their parents' bank account." He paused. The auditorium was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning hum. A teacher's pay doesn't define a teacher's worth, and neither does anyone's opinion. 300 people stood. The ovation rolled through the room like weather, starting in the back and sweeping forward until everyone was on their feet. Students, parents, teachers who knew exactly what Nathan meant because they lived it every day. Nathan looked down at us, at me, at Lily, who was clapping with her whole body, bouncing on my lap, yelling, "Yay, Daddy!" He smiled. Just for us. He didn't look at Gerald. He didn't need to. The message had already landed. The lobby afterward was a slow-moving river of handshakes and camera flashes. Nathan stood near the exit, surrounded by parents and students who wanted photos, signatures on programs, a chance to say thank you. He shook every hand. He remembered every name. I was holding Lily when I saw Gerald approach. He walked through the crowd like a man who'd forgotten how to use his legs. Diane was behind him, one hand on his elbow, guiding him. They stopped a few feet from Nathan, and Gerald waited, for the circle of well-wishers to thin. When it did, Gerald stepped forward. "Nathan." Nathan turned. His face was neutral, not cold, not warm, patient, the way he looked at a student who'd finally raised a hand. "I didn't know about all this," Gerald said. "You didn't ask." The words were simple. They carried no venom, but they landed like a closing argument. Gerald's jaw worked. He looked at the banner on the wall, at the programs littering the chairs, at the reporter from the Savannah Morning News who was interviewing Marcus Hall 3 feet away. He started and stopped. "Maybe I was out of line yesterday." Nathan looked at him. 12 years of teaching had given him the kind of patience that made other people uncomfortable because they couldn't tell if it was forgiveness or a verdict. "You were out of line 5 years ago, Gerald. Yesterday was just a reminder." Gerald flinched. A small one. A twitch near his left eye that I'd only seen once before, the day he lost a dealership contract he thought was guaranteed. Nathan didn't wait for a response. He turned back to a student who was tugging his sleeve. Gerald stood in the middle of that lobby, 300 people flowing around him, and for the first time in his 67 years, he had absolutely nothing to say. I didn't feel triumph. I felt something quieter, something closer to grief. "I don't need you to be impressed," I thought. "I need you to be decent." Megan called me that night. It was after 9. Lily was asleep in her own bed for the first time in 4 days. Nathan was in the kitchen, washing dishes, humming something low. "He hasn't said a word," Megan said. "Not since we left the auditorium." "Nothing?" "Nothing. He sat in the hotel parking lot for 20 minutes before starting the engine. Just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. I've never seen him do that. Dad always has something to say. Always." I leaned against the kitchen doorframe and watched Nathan scrub a pot. On the drive back, Megan continued, he pulled into a gas station, got out, stood by the pump, and didn't pump gas. He just stood there, then he got back in. What about Mom? She's been crying, the real kind this time. She called your name twice in the car when she thought I wasn't listening. I closed my eyes. And then, Megan said, about an hour from home, Dad finally spoke. He said one thing. What? He said, that kid, the doctor. He called Nathan the only adult who showed up. I waited. That's it, Megan said. Then he went quiet again. I pressed my palm to my forehead. This was not the Gerald I knew. The Gerald I knew would have driven home, poured a bourbon, and crafted an argument for why the ceremony meant nothing. The Gerald I knew didn't go silent. It's not an apology, I said. No, it's not. But it's something. It's the most I've ever seen from him. We sat in the quiet for a moment. Two sisters on opposite ends of a phone line, trying to figure out if a 67-year-old man could bend without breaking. I've never seen Dad look small before, Megan said. He looked small tonight. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. The article ran Wednesday. Savannah Morning News. Local teacher named Chatham County Teacher of the Year. A full half page in the community section. Nathan's photo, the one they took on stage with the plaque. Marcus beside him, beaming. A pull quote in bold. I'm a doctor today because a teacher believed in me when nobody else did. The reporter had called Nathan on Tuesday for a follow-up. She asked about the mentorship program he ran on weekends. She asked about the debate team's state championship run. She asked how it felt to be recognized. Nathan said, the recognition belongs to my students. I just open the door. They walk through it. That quote made it into the article too. And then Megan did something small and deliberate. She shared the article on Facebook, tagged nothing, wrote nothing, just the link, posted it, and walked away. Within 2 days, every person in my parents' social circle had seen it. The Hendersons, the Lyles, the women from Diane's garden club, the men Gerald played cards with at the VFW, and Mrs. Patterson. She called Diane on Thursday morning. Megan told me about it later. I saw the article, Mrs. Patterson said. Nathan seems like a wonderful man. I have to say, Diane, Gerald told me they were having problems, told me Cora was getting a divorce. Dead silence on the line. That doesn't look like a woman getting a divorce. That looks like a woman standing behind her husband at a ceremony in front of 300 people. Diane didn't know what to say. She stammered something about miscommunication. Mrs. Patterson wasn't buying it. Gerald's careful story, the one he'd been whispering for weeks, collapsed overnight. He didn't need anyone to expose him. The truth did it on its own, printed in black and white on page B4 of the local paper. The babysitter made the front page. The car dealer made excuses. He called on a Saturday. 1 week after the reunion. 7 days of silence, which for Gerald Whitfield was a geological event. Cora. His voice was different. Not smaller, not apologetic, just uncertain. I'd never heard my father uncertain. It sounded like a language he'd just started learning. Hi, Dad. A pause. I could hear the clock in his study. The grandfather clock my mother had inherited from her aunt. It ticked loud enough to fill the gaps in any conversation, which was probably why Gerald liked making calls from that room. I'm not going to say I was wrong about everything. He cleared his throat. But I was wrong about that, about what I said at dinner. Which time, Dad? Saturday or Sunday? Or 5 years ago? He was quiet long enough for the clock to tick 9 times. I counted. All of them. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Nathan was in the living room reading to Lily. I could hear him doing the voice of the Gruffalo. I appreciate you saying that, I said. But words don't fix this. You talked about my husband like he was nothing. In front of your granddaughter. I know. You told your friends I was getting a divorce. I know. You invited Travis to sit next to me like you were casting a role. He didn't deny it. If you want a relationship with Lily, I said, it starts with respecting her father, not tolerating him, respecting him. I'll try. Trying isn't enough. I need you to actually do it. And if you can't, then we'll keep our distance. Lily won't grow up thinking it's okay to be treated the way you treated Nathan. The clock ticked. Gerald exhaled. Okay, Cora. Okay. I hung up. No tears, no hugging, no dramatic music. Just a line drawn in clear, calm language. A boundary that should have existed 5 years ago. Love without respect is just control with a nicer name. I want to step outside the story for a moment. When my father said, "I'll try," part of me wanted to believe him. But I've been here before. 5 years ago, my mother said things will be different, and nothing changed. The same patterns, the same control. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were in my position, what would you need Gerald to actually do, not just say, to earn back your trust? I'm still figuring that out. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Okay, let me tell you what happened in the weeks that followed. 2 weeks later, Megan called me with news. I signed a lease. A lease? An apartment, in Savannah. A one-bedroom near Forsyth Park. I move in Saturday. I sat down on the porch steps. My sister, who had lived under Gerald Whitfield's roof for 37 years, who had slept in her childhood bedroom through college and graduate school and 2 failed relationships, who had asked our father's permission to buy a car at age 34, had signed a lease on her own apartment. Meg. Watching you stand up to Dad. She paused. It made me realize I've been waiting for permission my whole life. From him, from Mom, from everyone, and nobody was ever going to give it to me. She moved that Saturday. Nathan and I helped carry boxes. Lily helped by sitting in an empty moving box and pretending it was a spaceship. Megan hung a print on her living room wall that night. It said, "Not my circus, not my monkeys." I laughed until I cried. As for Gerald and Diane, we set rules. Simple, non-negotiable. Every visit required both Nathan and me to agree. No surprises. Nathan's name would be spoken with respect. At the table, on the phone, in conversations with friends. If we heard otherwise, we'd hear about it and the visits would stop. Travis Keller would not be mentioned, invited, or referenced. Ever. Any violation meant no contact, no negotiation, no second chances. Gerald accepted the terms. I could hear it cost him. The way his breathing changed, the way he said fine like the word had thorns. But he accepted. Because for the first time, he understood that he could lose both daughters at once, and his anniversary banner would hang in an empty yard. Nathan went back to school that Monday. Same tie, same lesson plan, same hallway. He didn't mention Gerald to anyone. He never had. A month later, I was picking Lily up from preschool when she ran to me across the playground with her backpack bouncing and her shoes untied. "Mommy, my teacher says Daddy is famous," I laughed. "Daddy isn't famous, baby. He's just good at what he does." She thought about that for a second, tilted her head the way she does when she's working through a big idea. Is that the same thing? I stopped walking. I looked at my daughter, 4 years old, shoelaces dragging, wisdom falling out of her mouth like spare change, and I thought about everything that had led to that sentence. "Yeah," I said. "Maybe it is." We drove home. Nathan's car was already in the driveway. Through the window I could see him at the kitchen table, grading papers, red pen in hand, mug of coffee going cold beside him. The same scene I'd walked into 1,000 times. The same man. Unchanged. Unbroken. His Teacher of the Year plaque sits on the bookshelf in our living room now. Next to it is a framed photo from the ceremony. Nathan and Lily on stage, Lily's arms around his neck, both of them laughing at something only they understood. I didn't go back to that reunion to get revenge. I went because I wanted my daughter to know her grandparents. What I got instead was a reminder that stayed with me every day since. You can't control how people see you, but you can control who you allow at your table. My father measured people in dollars. My husband measures them in potential. And every morning when Nathan Brennan puts on his $20 tie and drives to a building full of kids who need him, he is worth more than Gerald Whitfield ever understood. Respect isn't earned by a bank statement. It's earned by showing up, especially when no one's watching. That's my story. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, a parent, a sibling, someone who was supposed to be in your corner, I'd love to hear how you handled it. And if this story reminded you of someone who deserves more respect than they're getting, share it with them. There's another story waiting for you in the description. It's about a woman whose in-laws tried to take credit for everything she built. I think you'll connect with it. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.